Welcome back, learner, with the course Rudimentary Principles and Practices of Managerial Economics, Module 3, Consumer Behavior, Part 2nd, Lecture number 30, Indifference Curve Analysis. In the previous class, we had discussed marginal rate of substitution. In today's class, we are going to discuss the consumer equilibrium through indifference curve. For this, we are going to study the price line and budget line. Price line or budget line. Price line denotes the income the consumer is having, and within that income, how the consumer is going to consume the various combination of the two commodities that will give the equal satisfaction. Why this is a price line? Price line means we are denoting the income of the consumer, because whatsoever the income we have, we are going to purchase within that income. So, this price line actually the combination of consumer income and the prices of the commodities that the consumer is going to purchase. So, this price line is basically the combination of two commodities which a consumer can purchase on the basis of his income and the prices of the two commodities, so as to maintain the same level of satisfaction. This price line is also known as line of attainable combination, opportunity line, consumption possibility line, budget constraint, etc. Why it is constrained? Because it limits the consumer how much they can spend, because what they have they can only spend only that much. So, price line basically reflects the pattern of purchasing of the consumer with the given price of the commodity, so as to arrive the maximum satisfaction. The slope of the price line is equal to price of X commodity upon price of Y commodity, because we are going to demand the respective goods and services at their given price, and the income of the consumer is limited. So, they have to choose how much quantity they need to purchase at given price out of their limited income to maximum the satisfaction. This is known as price line. The consumer cannot spend more than its income because it is beyond its approach, and at the same time he is not going to underutilize its income, because in that case the consumer is not getting the maximum satisfaction. Elements. Two most important elements of price line is income of the consumer and second, market price of the commodity. So, we can say that income of the consumer is equal to quantity purchase. Quantity purchase means price into Q, because if you have an income of 100, that means you can purchase the commodity out of that 100 rupees, out of that 100 income only. This can be represented with the formula of price line, which says M is equal to Px into Qx plus Py into Qy, whereas M denotes income of the consumer. Px denote price of X commodity. Qx denote quantity of X commodity. Py denotes price of Y commodity, and Qy denotes quantity of Y commodity. So, whatsoever you are purchasing at a given price of the respective commodity, that should equal to the income of the consumer. Properties of price line, or you can say the characteristics of price line. First thing, it is negative slope. Why it is negative? Whenever I am saying negative means inverse relationship. In order to increase the consumption of one commodity, you have to reduce the consumption of another commodity, and that is why it is negative. And that is the reason why the slope of price line or the price line is downward sloping or negative slope, because you are going to increase one, so you have to sacrifice the other commodity, and that is why price line is negative slope. Price line is like this is negative slope. Straight line, the nature of the price line is straight line. Why it is a straight line? Whenever I am saying anything as a straight line, that means the rate of substitution should be constant. So, in price line, the substitution of one commodity with the other commodity in order to maintain the equal satisfaction remains constant. And that is why the price line is sloping downward, and at the same time it is a straight line, signifies that constant market rate of exchange exists between various combination of the two commodities at the price of the product, and the price of the product remains constant and certain. Next, real income line. Real income line means the consumer can spend only that much what he has. The consumer cannot spend more than he or she has. And that is why the budget line correlates between consumer income and their spending capacity. You cannot spend more than you have. And if you are going to spend less than what you have, then you are unable to maximize your satisfaction. Next, tangent to indifference curve. Price line is always tangent to the indifference curve, because when it is indifference, then only you are maximizing your satisfaction at the given price of the commodities within the limited income of the consumer. So, the consumer will be in equilibrium only when price line is tangent to the indifference. How? Your indifference curve is convex in nature and your price line is straight. So, when your graph is like this and like this, that means your price line A, B is tangent to the indifference curve. Then only the consumer is getting the maximum satisfaction. satisfaction. Assumption of price line or budget line. The very first assumption is economists considered that the consumer will spend their income in consuming only two commodities. So, in price line, you will be consuming two commodities, either the combination of the two commodities or consuming only one commodity at a time. But definitely there will be the combination of two commodities in order to derive the maximum satisfaction. Because consuming only one commodity will lower down your satisfaction level. Income of the consumer remains constant. It is not going to change. So, you have to manage your expenditure within the income you have. Next, price of the commodity remains constant. The individual consumer is not good enough to influence the market price. You are not going to increase the price of the product or reduce the price of product by purchasing high or less. Whatsoever is the price that is decided in the market, that will remain constant for a period of time. And it is assumed that consumer spends and consume the whole income. It is assumed the consumer is going to utilize the entire income in order to derive the maximum satisfaction. Tabular representation of budget line. This is an example which is representing the concept of price line or budget line. As per this example, the consumer is having only 40 rupees as his or her income. And the two commodity the consumer can purchase, that is orange and mango. The price of orange is 8 rupees and the price of mango is 4 rupees. So, you have to take two commodity, orange and mango, their respective prices given and the income of consumer is also given. What I explained, price line is equal to consumer income plus market price of goods. So, you are seeing the various combination A, B, C, D, E and F. At combination A, you were consuming 5 oranges and 0 mango. You are consuming only one commodity and you are spending entire 40 rupees on purchasing 5 unit of oranges and you have spent it entire 40 rupees. Now, the combination B, you are reducing the consumption of orange and you are increasing the consumption of Y. That means the orange is reducing and mango is increasing in order to maintain equal satisfaction. Why? Because income is limited. Now, at combination B, you are consuming 4 oranges and 2 mango. Combination C, you are consuming 3 and 4 mango. Again, you are reducing orange and you are increasing mango. Again, you are reducing orange and you are increasing mango. And at the F combination, you are consuming 0 oranges and you are consuming 10 mango. That means A and F is the extreme point. At A, you are just consuming oranges and at F, you are just consuming mango. And in between these two, you are consuming the various combination of orange plus mango. And each combination is giving you the equal satisfaction. Price line diagram. Y-axis, x-axis, 0. On the x-axis, orange. On the y-axis, mango. Okay? So, you are going to plot all the point as per the tabular representation. And you can see initially you were consuming 5 oranges and 0 mango. This was the. At combination B, you are this much of orange and this. Now, you are reducing oranges and you are increasing mango. Again reducing, again increasing, again reducing, increasing. Like this you are going to do. So, all this is the combination A, B, C, D, E and this must be F. And each are showing some combination of oranges and mango. When you are going to join, this will give you the price line. Okay. So, you are going to connect. So, this will be a straight line price line. So, this A and F is your price line. This signifies the maximum combination of the two goods the consumer can purchase at a given market price of the respective commodities out of their limited income. Consumer is not going to attain this point, nor the consumer is going to attain this point, because it is beyond the scope of consumer, because the income of the consumer is not this much, and the consumer will not be at this point as well, at point L, because it is the underutilization of its income. So, consumer will not be any point above the price line, nor will the consumer will be at any point below the price line, because both is beyond its approach. In one, the income of the consumer is not getting utilized effectively, and the one is where the consumer is not having enough income to purchase that commodity. This is the explanation for it. Change in price line and purchase line. So, when there is change in the price line, suppose change in consumer income. As for example, income of the consumer was only 40 rupees, and within that 40 income, consumer were purchasing both the commodity. So, if the income of the consumer is increased and the price of both the commodity remains constant as it was before, there will be shift in the price line, either towards the left or towards the right to the original price line. Suppose if the initial price line was this, and the income of the consumer is increased from 40 to 50. Now, more units can be purchased because the income has been increased and the price of the commodity remains constant. So, the price line will shift towards right and the new price line is formed. This was your original price line. But suppose if the income of the consumer is reduced from 40 to 30. Now, the price of the commodity remains constant. But what happened? Now, the consumer will able to purchase less commodity. So, the price line will shift towards left to the original price line, like this. So, this line basically when income of the consumer is increasing, and this line when occurred when income of the consumer is decreasing. Change in price of commodity. When the income of the consumer remains as it is, constant, but there is change in the price of the commodity, then there will not be any formation of new price line because income hasn't changed, but there will be a slightly shift towards upward and towards downward. Why? Because due to reduction or increment in the price of the commodity. For example, Y0X commodity X commodity Y, and suppose this was your original price line. So, income of the consumer was 40 as per the previous example. So, there is no change in the income. So, income, this price line is same now. Price line is not going to change because this is the price line, this is the maximum income the consumer is getting. But suppose price of X and Y reduces. When the price is reduced, you are able to purchase more commodity, more combination of an XY. So, the price line will shift towards right or towards upward to the previous price line. But suppose if the price of X and Y increased, what will happen? Now you are going to purchase less commodity, less combination of X and Y. So the price line will shift towards downward or towards left, like this. So this is when there is change in the price of the commodity and when there is change in the income of the consumer. What will happen to the price line? Consumer equilibrium through indifference. We are just studying the behavior of consumer. So what is consumer equilibrium? Consumer equilibrium is a point where the consumer is getting the maximum satisfaction from consuming the combination of two commodities out of its limited income. It is the point where the consumer does not want to increase the consumption or reduce the consumption, because it is the ideal point where the consumer is getting the maximum satisfaction, maximum benefit by spending their limited income. It is a point where the consumer is not intent to change, and consumer equilibrium is going to study through indifference curve. Indifference curve is a modern techniques for analyzing the consumer equilibrium. And for this consumer equilibrium, you need two important tools, and that is budget line and indifference map. Budget line we have discussed in detail. Indifference map we have discussed in detail. So these two tools are very important in order to locate the point of consumer equilibrium through indifference curve. This is an indifference map. Indifference map represent the various indifference curve together. Each indifference curve gives same level of satisfaction. Higher indifference curve represent higher satisfaction. Lower indifference curve represent lower satisfaction. And this is the price line which denotes the combination of the two commodities, the consumer consuming at their respective price within their limited income. Assumption of consumer equilibrium. The very first behavior of assumption is rational. The consumer is rational as they want to maximize their satisfaction with their limited income by spending in two commodities. Second, indifference map represents scale of preference of consumer across different combination of two goods. As I told you people, indifference map shows various indifference curve, and each indifference curve shows different combination of the two goods. Each indifference curve will give equal satisfaction, but one indifference curve is different from the other indifference curve in regard with satisfaction. So you have to choose your scale of preference. This assumes the consumption of only two commodities. You are consuming only two commodities. The income of the consumer is constant. It is same as it was in price line. Same, because price line is needed for locating the consumer equilibrium. Price of both the commodity is constant and fixed. Each commodity is having the fixed price, and you cannot influence the price of the product. The commodities are homogeneous and divisible in nature, same as it is for price line. There is no change in the taste, preference, habits of the consumer throughout the analysis. The same assumption as it was for the price line. Condition of consumer equilibrium. This is the most important point in order to locate the point of consumer equilibrium. All these three conditions need to be satisfied at a particular point in order to say consumer is in equilibrium. Each condition. If only one condition is satisfied, other two are not satisfied. If two are satisfied, other one is not satisfied, consumer will not be in equilibrium. All these conditions are must condition for a consumer to be in equilibrium. The first assumption or the condition is price line or budget line is tangent to the indifference. That means this is your price line, this is your price line, and this is your indifference curve. So your price line and indifference curve is tangent to each other. That means your price line touches the indifference curve at some point. Second condition, slope of price line is equal to the slope of indifference curve. But obvious, if this is your price line and it is tangent to IC at this point, so the slope of this IC is and the slope of this both are equal to each other. And the third condition, the marginal rate of substitution should be diminishing, and this is represented by the convexity of the indifference curve. Your indifference curve is convex. When your indifference curve is like this, that means marginal rate of substitution is diminishing or indifference curve is convex. If it is like this, that means marginal rate of substitution is not diminishing, rather it is increasing, constant, 0. So these three conditions are equally important for satisfying or for locating the point of equilibrium. This can be explained with the help of a diagram. As you can see the diagram, the same diagram I am going to draw it and make you people understand the consumer equilibrium through indifference curve analysis. Y-axis, X-axis, 0. Suppose the consumer is having some income, maybe 100 rupees. So this is the price line, that is A, and B is the price line that represent the various commodity of X and Y, and consumer can buy at this point only because this is the income of the consumer. Suppose 3 indifference curve is shown, IC1, IC2 and IC3. This is point F, this is point E and this is point D. Consumer is equilibrium at this point where the consumer is consuming ON quantity of Y and OM quantity of X. At point E, all the 3 conditions are fulfilled. First condition was price line should be tangent to the IC curve, first is full. Then price line, the slope of price line and the slope of IC is equal, and the third is IC should be convex, that means marginal rate of substitution should be diminishing. All this condition is fulfilled at this point. So this is the equilibrium where the consumer is getting the maximum satisfaction by spending its entire income in combination of ON commodity of Y and OM commodity of X. The consumer will not be equilibrium at point F and point D, because here only one condition is fulfilled, that is condition of indifference curve need to be convex from its origin. But the other two condition, price line is tangent to indifference curve, neither it is being followed here, neither it is being followed here. And the second, the slope of IC should be equal to the slope of price line. If price line is not touching, how can be the slope be equal? So the consumer is not going to be equilibrium at point F because it is beyond its income. And it is not going to be point at D because it is underutilization of income. So the consumer will be only equilibrium at point E, where all the three condition as convex from the origin, price line is tangent to the IC curve, and the slope of price line is equal to the slope of indifference curve. It is a point of no change, no loss, and the consumer is getting the maximum satisfaction. So this is the explanation for the diagram. So this is all for today's session, in which we have discussed the consumer equilibrium through the indifference curve analysis by considering the concept of price line and indifference map. So consumer is equilibrium at a point where the consumer is going to get the maximum satisfaction out of its limited income at the given market price of the two commodities. So in the next session, we are going to deal with the importance and limitation of indifference curve, and thank you for today's session.